Okay, at this point I think we're fairly satisfied with our initial outline, so it's time for us to start creating our secondary outline. And the whole purpose here is that we're kind of refining our idea as we progress. So we're going to outline everything once again, getting a feel for what we liked about the first outline, what we didn't like, kind of reviewing the process, and starting to turn this into something that's a bit more finalized. So let's create a new layer, and we'll call this Shape Outline 2, not 3, but 2, and we'll come back down to Shape Outline 1, and we'll pull down its opacity. So it's just there as kind of a faint representation. Now, just a note for anybody following along or creating their own drawings, you may not need as many outline steps as I'm doing. I'm probably going to end up with 3, where I outline it once to step away from my volume shapes, outline it a second time to refine my idea, and then from that second stage, create my final line drawing. If you're really attached to what you created in Shape Outline 1 and you want to go ahead and start working on your final line drawing at this point, that's totally cool. I'm trying to build this up very gradually so that we can see a progression, and we have time to change our minds about anything that's not really working. So let's go back to Shape Outline 2, as far as layers are concerned, and let's just begin outlining. Now, some of this we don't really have any problems with. You could, if you wanted to, I suppose, grab certain lines and just copy them back over to this layer, but I recommend you don't do that. Take the time and evaluate everything you've done so far, and just to make everything stand out, let's go into Shape Outline 1. We'll double-click it for... Actually, you know what? Let's speed things up a little bit. We'll cancel out of there. And as soon as this window goes away, which, there we go. It took a second to go away. Yeah, there we go. Let's right-click, and we will copy layer styles from this guy, and we'll just apply them to Shape Outline 1. And so he just turns gray immediately because we did that color overlay. All right, now let's come back over to Shape Outline 2, and we're just going to outline again. Now, what I'm going to do is start worrying a little more about line quality, and to really do that, I'm going to zoom in a bit, and I'm going to set my opacity to a constant value instead of this variable value where it's at 35, and as I do that, we'll draw with a much lighter shade of blue. So no more variations in line opacity right now. We'll zoom out just a little bit more so I can kind of see the shape I'm working on. So I don't really want to, I don't think I really want to pinch in as much as I did here. But we'll pinch in just a little bit less. And I'm going to take a really slow, kind of more tedious approach to laying down these lines. Very gently. So you notice now I'm making longer strokes as opposed to those little short, quick strokes. Now here I'm going to start paying a little more attention to the details of what's actually going on. Let's bring our bicep muscle in, and wow, that got a little bit out of hand. We'll curve this kind of in toward the arm, and then the outside of the elbow we'll actually bring down as a separate piece. So you can see where that bicep muscle would attach, kind of on the outside of the elbow. And we'll start to bring out our forearm. Also, evaluate everything you're tracing. Don't just blindly trace. Take a look at what you're doing and say, do I like this shape? Like here, this kind of forms a bit of a point right there. Are we liking that point? Do we need to kind of flatten it out a little bit? Keep that kind of thing in mind, and don't just trace over what you've already done, because you're here to revise and to revisit and make sure that everything you're doing is what you want to have happen in your drawing. So I'm going to pull this out a little more and then round out that point a little bit. Now this area I'm actually kind of liking, so we'll generally just stick with that. I'm also going to take my brush size down by 1 pixel, so from 4 down to 3. Let's put a little more thought into this hand. We can kind of see where the thumb would come out. But then we'll come over here to the front of the knuckle. We'll go down toward that middle finger knuckle, and then we'll start swooping our way back along the knuckles of the pinky. I'll probably pull this up a little bit sooner. And here what we're going to do is get this meat of the palm pushed back a little bit. So it's doing the same thing. It's just doing it a little bit closer in, that's all. And step back and see how that's looking. I think that's looking a little bit better than what we had before. I can start to get a feel for where the fingers are placed now. Alright, and we'll come back here to the elbow. And just trying to put a little more thought, a little more detail into everything that's going on. I guess I don't really have to make this look too pretty yet. We're not really to the line drawing stage yet. Okay. I'll just let there be a little bit of an overlap right down there. Change our direction to kind of accentuate that tricep just a little bit. I think it's a little bit tighter than what I drew before, but not too much more. Now we can overlap where the shoulder's coming into the tricep. Put a couple more angles into this. I think the collarbone was working okay. And I don't really have a problem with the shoulder line leading into the neck. Whoops. I don't know. Yeah. Must have tapped one of the little extra buttons on my tablet again. And what brush am I using right now? There we go. Excuse me. Yeah, things get a little bit quiet when I start concentrating. It just kind of goes. Now I'm going to stop right here at the back of the head. As before, we'll save the last part of the head, we'll save the head for last anyway. So I'll do a little bit of a Y split right here where the pectoral meets the shoulder. And I guess at this point we could also start putting in some nipples, which will be right there at the point of the pectoral. And this one, I guess if we followed it around, would be somewhere over here. Let's trace that in kind of roughly for now. I gotta be really careful. I'm going to kind of lean up on the tablet a little bit so I can move my wrist to get nice fluid arcs out of my hand. That is where drawing with a tablet inside of an image editor is a little bit different than a piece of paper, because usually, when you're working on a piece of paper, you'll find yourself spinning that piece of paper like a fiend to allow yourself just the right angle for creating a line naturally with your hand. And you can't do that as easily. If you've got like a Cintiq tablet, you can, but I don't have one of those. And I never really got the hang of rotating my tablet. It doesn't seem to work as naturally for me. Right. And so we'll kind of accentuate that pinching in a little bit by creating a bit of an overlap right there. Okay. And we'll go back to some of these detail lines. Make sure those make it into this stage of the drawing as well. Just clean them up a little bit. We don't need as much of a division in the pectoral. Come over here down this arm. Alright, now, I'm not really pleased with what's going on with the arm right here. The hand is looking okay, but I'm not really feeling it. The forearm here, I think maybe this elbow area is just a little bit too long. And that's the kind of thing that you really want to watch out for so that you can start fixing it at this stage of the game. So let's get our brush back out. We'll go ahead and get the bicep etched in really carefully here. Just bring that in a little more smoothly. And I'm okay with that line, but I think this line in particular is a little too long. So we'll pull it to about here, and then we'll go ahead and start arcing it up into the actual forearm. And just S-curve that around. Let's pay a little bit more attention to what's going on here. We got a nice, very basic general shape in, but we can do better. So now we get a little bit of shape in for the pinky. And for the ring finger. And it looks like I inadvertently switched over to my pencil tool by, again, I think I'm tapping a button up on the corner of my tablet again. So don't do that. And then our index finger. Get that knuckle in place. And we'll get that lump in for the thumb. The thumb just kind of disappears around the back of the hand. Let's get the wrist a little bit more subtle in there. And then we can also start maybe kind of outlining where knuckles are going to be placed. There's some of those lines at the back of the hand. I don't really want to go in and draw veins or anything. Although I guess you could if you wanted to. Again, here's some lines kind of for the underside of each of the knuckles. Okay, so now let's back out and have a look at what we've got. Even maybe take shape outline 1 and hide it. I think that's really starting to come along a whole lot better. So let's bring shape outline 1 back in. Zoom in, and we'll get back to work here on the outside of the arm, which I think was coming along okay. Maybe widen that out just a tiny imperceptible amount. I got a little bit of flesh here before we actually get to the tricep. I kind of like that, but you don't need to make the tricep quite so pointy. And we'll leave a little bit of overlap there as we start to kind of move into the armpit. And the armpit would kind of be right in there. Okay, so moving down the leg, you have a little bit of a protrusion there for the hip bone. And we'll try to keep things still relatively neat. And do the quad, that nice and round. We have a nice looking indentation before we get to the kneecap. And then from the kneecap we'll just transition right into the shin, which we'll put a little curvature into. Go ahead and create a little bit of a shape for the ankle. Back up the Achilles tendon to the calf. I guess I could stand for the back of the knee being just a hair wider, so I'll just follow around the very outside edge of all of those scribbles. And I like this S-curve we've established for the back of the thigh. I think that works really well. In fact, I'd like to follow a little closer to the outside edge of that. And then we'll bring in the left leg straight from the crotch, which I guess we could go ahead and get that in place too. That's not as big of a concern. That's going to be covered up by our loincloth in short order. Okay, I'll bring the calf muscle up just a little bit higher. You know, I'm working with a thinner line now, so I've got to think a bit about where that line gets placed. Okay, now we completely obliterated the ankle there, so Let's put an ankle back in. I'll put an ankle in over here too. Okay. And maybe a little bit of an outline for where the shin bone will come down. It kind of spreads out as it runs up toward the kneecap. I still like some of these lines that we had outlining where the kneecap sits. Alright, we'll just follow that up, and then we'll draw in the rump back here. There we go. Okay, now, right here where the arm meets, let's see, I'd like there to be some sort of a shape there, like it's kind of wrinkling back over, maybe something like that. I can pull that up a little bit higher, so let me zoom back in there. You gotta kind of go out, zoom back in, get an idea of what you're looking at. Okay. Alright, looking pretty good so far. What is going on down here? Oh, it's just the ankle. Okay, I thought I'd misplaced a line or something. Alright, let's go ahead and get the shoes out of the way. So, we'll trace out the back side of the heel. And again, you'll notice we're working with a much thinner line now. We're addressing line quality a little bit more, and just starting to get a more refined version of our shape while paying attention to anything we want to change along the way. Maybe thin this part of the shoe out and curve it up, and then maybe just for the fun of it, when we start to sweep it back, we'll give it a little bit of a lump right there at the tip of the toe. Come up here into the top of the foot. Okay. Right, and I think over here we've already got a nice structure in place. So we'll kind of straight over. So I'm kind of flattening out that line there where the top outside of the foot is. Okay, and now we'll follow this around to the outside of the foot. Bringing around just, again, really just kind of outlining what we've already established, but refining it just a little bit. Okay, let's pull back, have a look at what we've got, and maybe turn off Shape Outline 1. And it looks a little bit broken because of Photoshop's zoom factor, so we'll back out to here, and I think that's looking pretty good so far. Maybe, we could widen up the right leg a little bit. Nah, I think it's okay. I think we'll get by. Just thinking out loud. Okay, so now we can turn on Shape Outline 1, and now we can start putting together a version of the face that doesn't have all this underlying structure, which should look really nice. So let's see, I'll start out here at the nose, and what I'm going to do is just start by drawing at the bridge of the nose, coming all the way around this shape that we created, and then curve back. And you notice I left a little bit of an indentation right there, a very subtle one, to kind of help differentiate the nostril. And then we'll curve that out, and we'll stop here and leave kind of a broken area where we really kind of dig in the nostril a little bit separately. I can overlap that to really make that nose feel like it kind of folds over where the nostril exists. Okay, now from there we can start building out this jowl line and really carefully start to trace out what the face is going to look like. So we'll make the jowls a little bit heavier on the bottom than they are on the top. But still, in that way, that also allows us to kind of define a cheekbone, too. Like the skin has got a little bit of weight. It's pulling down from those cheekbones a bit. We'll come up into that little brow that we defined earlier, which is looking pretty good. I kind of like it. Might pull our eye out just a little bit further. Now, let's pay a little more attention to the actual shape of the eye. We'll give our little tiny corner of the eye, and we'll round out something here for the very top. Again, give a corner on the outside, and let's even do some little tiny pupils. They don't have to be perfect or round or anything, just something so we can kind of get an idea where he's looking. So now he's looking at us. There you go. Now let's do this other jowl line that sits over here in front of us. I'm not going to connect this all the way down. In fact, I don't even think I want it to go that far. We'll just something to sort of illustrate where it is. And put a little more curvature into the shape of the mouth. Not much, though. And then we can follow this down into the chin. Now I'm going to let the chin kind of overlap the back of that cheek, and I'll let the cleft in the chin kind of overlap a little bit as well. And again, I'm kind of changing the shape of the jowls a little bit so they look a little bit heavier at the bottom than they do at the top. So give them a little bit more of a horizontal line down toward the bottom, and then start to sweep up from that. And I kind of like this line to help us define where the brow ends. And maybe accentuate the center of the brows here. So there's the top of the ear. We'll go ahead and create an earlobe down here. And trace that around and out. And we won't let the ear come to a perfect point. We'll round that out a little bit. And so now we can start swooping up the forehead and across the back of the actual head. Now, I originally had in mind that he'd be holding some kind of a stick or something, and we haven't drawn that yet. So I'm going to do a rough representation of that stick really quickly so you can kind of see that he is meaning to be holding onto something. And I think at this point, we're okay with our second outline. I think we can actually stop here and call it. And then from here, I can't think of anything else I really want to change. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit concerned about what's going on here with the arm. Maybe adjusting the width of the bicep a little bit, or maybe I'm just still not satisfied with how the forearm and the bicep are meeting. They just look a little bit out of whack. So before we go any further, let's take a look at that. Let's I'll leave our shape outline on for now. What I'm going to do is just get vicious with my eraser. Because I think part of it is that the upper part of the arm is just getting a little bit too thin right there in that area. So if I widen that out, and then back out, hide shape outline 1, is that looking any better? Actually, it is a little bit. I also might want to take the bicep and bring it down a little bit. So let's zoom back in here, and we'll undo that. I'll just connect these lines together and then get clever with my eraser. And I think I'm going to pull the elbow back a little bit. So just keeping it quick and light. Willing to make changes very quickly. Also, let's scribble this. I'm going to shrink down the forearm just a little bit. And I think part of it might be what's going on right here. Maybe the fact that it was bending out too far was just looking odd to me. So let's minimize that a little bit, or at least subtle up the angle. There we go. So not quite so bulbous, because to me it was just looking a little funny. Okay. Almost where I want to be. I'm just going to thin out the wrist just a little bit. Let's grab the mighty eraser and I'll kill the lines on either side of that. Okay, so yeah, some quick editing to kind of help us out a little bit, and I think we've got something that's going to work out a lot better as I somehow switched over to my pencil again, but that's okay. In this particular case, I don't think it's going to kill us too much. Alright, let's back out. Alright, I'm thinking that's looking a whole lot better than it was. It doesn't look quite so out of place. So we've got two separate outline stack, and I think at this point we're ready to start creating our final line drawing, which is what we're going to start doing in the next video.